How we doing today, planet Earth? My name is Ian Fox, and today we are going to be discussing the Switch 2. And I gotta warn you, y'all better buckle the f*** up, because you are gonna be in for a rant. As always, I gotta be honest with you guys, I have never been the biggest fan of Nintendo. I've always enjoyed games like Super Mario and Super Smash Bros., but I'd only ever played those kinds of games at someone else's house and definitely with other people. Nintendo is known for making phenomenal party games, after all. For all my years of playing video games, I have only ever owned one system from Nintendo, and it might not be surprising to hear that it just so happened to be the Wii.
All I do is throw that ball up in the air, and oh, jeez, and there goes the tennis racket.
The Wii was their best-selling console of all time at 101 million units until late 2021, where it was ultimately surpassed by the Switch with 103 million. Despite my lack of interest regarding Nintendo consoles, the Switch was different. The Switch broke ground because it was the first time that a home console could be taken on the go. Not only could you play first-party Nintendo games like Zelda, for example, which is like the game I'd buy a Switch to play, but there are other third-party AAA games that got ported over to the Switch, like Skyrim, Doom and Doom Eternal, BioShock, Borderlands, No Man's Sky, and loads of others. Before the Switch, all handheld systems from every company had to have games made specifically for it, but afterwards, that just wasn't the case anymore. It was never on my priority list to get one of these things, but I certainly entertained the idea of it a number of times because I do a lot of traveling, and having the ability to take games on the go to pass the time sounded like a great idea. Just as I was considering snagging one of them bitches for a good joystick fondling for what would become the final time, Nintendo was met at the table by a new and more powerful competitor in the handheld scene, the Steam Deck. Really what it came down to for me at that point was two things. If I got a Switch, I could play Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and experiment with other first-party titles, but if I got a Steam Deck, I could play all of the third-party games that I already own on Steam with better visuals and higher frame rates. I chose the Steam Deck. Knowing that the Switch was on the tail end of its life cycle, with us being over halfway into the current generation of consoles and all, I decided that if I'm gonna buy one, I'd wait and get the Switch too. Eventually, it was announced, and Nintendo made the right choice by just making a better Switch. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they say. The announcement got me pretty hard, because the one requirement that it would need to meet for me was backwards compatibility, so I could play those newfangled Zelda games as well as whatever is to be released in the future. From that moment, I was actually excited for Nintendo's next console, at least until just the other day. While I was at work doing my thing, going about the daily grind, I got a YouTube notification on my phone that said they had just hosted a Nintendo Direct. My interest was piqued, because I've been trying to keep an eye out for any news about the Switch 2, but because I was at work, I wasn't able to watch it right then and there. So I took a mental note of it so I wouldn't forget to watch it later, and continued on with my day. Later on, when I got home, I sat down to watch the video, and honestly, everything looked really damn good.
Damn, what is that, bro?
They announced a lot of cool stuff, like a bunch of new features to differentiate the Switch 2 from the original, a new Mario Kart game that is fully open world, and a new Donkey Kong game that will launch with the system. What was also announced was a load of third-party titles that will be coming to the platform as well, like Hades 2, Elden Ring, The Duskbloods, which is a FromSoft game with guns, and that shit looks amazing. They also announced Borderlands 4 would be coming to the Switch 2, as well as Cyberpunk 2077, and a lot more either launching with the system or coming at a later date. With all of this news, it really seemed like there wasn't anything to be alarmed by, and I was still feeling pretty excited about it. But something that I and many others happened to notice was that Nintendo refrained from sharing any prices during the Direct. They gave all of the information there was to possibly give, including a June 5th release date for the Switch 2. That is, aside from any pricing at any point during the entire showcase. This to me was a red flag.
Look, a red flag! What do we do when we see a red flag? Right, we stop!
I'm not too familiar with how Nintendo typically does things, but I know Sony and Microsoft usually at least tell you how much the system is going to cost. So I did a quick Google search to look a little deeper, and when I did, the first thing I would find was that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be priced at $450, which is pretty standard for a console, so that didn't really stand out so much. The thing that set the alarm bells off for me was that it seems any game that comes to the Switch, new or old, will be $80 for a digital edition and $90 for a physical copy. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this, I was pretty pissed off, and I instantly lost any and all interest in the Nintendo Switch 2. The moment that I saw that pricing was like seeing my own bat symbol in the sky, because I have a YouTube channel, and this is something that I have to talk about. I have talked about the price hike of video games from 60 to 70 in my Gaming Kinda Sucks video, and every opinion that I shared on this topic still stands. For the industry as a whole, there was no justifiable reason to raise prices other than these companies wanted to see if customers would pay $70. And they succeeded. Thus, the entire industry followed suit not long after. They said that it was because video games are more expensive to make than ever, which I'm not saying isn't true, but video games are also more profitable than they have ever been. And if there was ever any doubt that these companies somehow truly needed more money to develop their games, Nintendo themselves actually proved the narrative to be a lie even further with the way they priced Tears of the Kingdom before that game came out. When they had originally started marketing the game and accepting pre-orders, the title was set at the standard price of $60. But when they noticed that other companies were bumping up the price, they made sure to do the same. People who went to pre-order Tears of the Kingdom noticed that Nintendo had decided to bump up the price from 60 to 70 for literally no reason other than they knew that such a thing was now normalized and their fans would pay for it regardless.
So that was a fucking lie.
They didn't release an upgraded version of the Switch that was more powerful or anything. They just chose to change to the quote-unquote next-gen price on old-as-dirt hardware. It's important to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that when the original Switch was released, Nintendo basically remained in the 7th generation of consoles, i.e. the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The Nintendo Switch, in terms of its power and capability, is closer to the PS3 than the PS4, meaning that even now in 2025, they have yet to enter competition against the 8th generation of consoles. If you ask me, with the release of the Steam Deck in 2022, aside from Nintendo's first-party titles, the system became completely obsolete because their new competitor can do third-party games a lot better, and with the near constant Steam sales, does a whole hell of a lot better with pricing. Now here they are, trying to set a new industry standard that, if successful, will ripple down to every other game currently in development. That is the sole reason that I lost interest in the Switch 2, because why in the ever-loving fuck would I spend that much money on the console just to spend an insane amount of money on the games themselves? If you ask me, moving the price of Tears of the Kingdom from 60 to 70 on what is basically a fucking mobile PlayStation 3 was already a total ripoff. Now Nintendo is about to release a new console that is comparable in power to the PlayStation 4 while still being less powerful than the Steam Deck, and they want to charge more for their games than most other companies out there? I think the fuck not. The Switch 2 may be able to play games at 1080p and even up to 120 FPS depending on the game and likely if it's docked, but still, why would I choose that over the Steam Deck where I can get every third-party title that will be coming to the Switch at much cheaper prices when they go on sale? Why would I buy Elden Ring for $90 or even $80 when I can get it on Steam Deck for much less when it goes on sale, or even when it's not on sale? The game came out in 2022. Why is Nintendo trying to sell it for more than it was worth when it came out originally? Diabolically priced games may be the main reason that I no longer want a Switch 2, but there are a couple of other ways that Nintendo is trying to squeeze every dollar out of their fans as they can that I find to be really insulting. For one, they are selling next-gen versions of both The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for $80 to $90 if you don't own them already, and $20 for the upgrade if you do. For many other games on other platforms, that's a free update. The other example that comes to mind isn't quite as significant, but Nintendo is also charging an additional $10 for the damn tech demo they made to teach you how the system works. If anything, it's just the cherry on top that really shows how little they care for their customers and how greedy they are choosing to be. That would be like if Sony charged $10 for the Astrobot tech demo that came installed on the PS5. Good thing they didn't, because Astrobot impressed their players so much that they turned it into a full-fledged game that sold really well and won Game of the Year at the VGAs in 2024. Imagine if Nintendo had only that much respect for their fans to not make them pay money for an interactive instruction manual.
That's sheer insanity. I'm out.
Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, what the fate of everyone's wallet will look like when buying video games in the future comes down to the hardcore Nintendo fans. I don't have a history with Nintendo, therefore I don't have any kind of attachment to their franchises, But I know damn well that there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to care and will just throw money at this company without a second thought, because they have to play the new game with Mario, Donkey Kong, and Zelda's face on it. If you enjoy video games in general, you should not be buying into this. It's disappointing to me that a company like Nintendo is so willing to basically non-consensually bend their fans over and fuck them till they're happy about it. It's really unfortunate, because I wanted to try to get into Nintendo games and experience the titles that I always hear are really good. But I simply, in good conscience, cannot support the Switch 2 and will continue on with my life not caring about Nintendo as a player in this industry, and it's their own damn fault. They've made me, someone interested in what they have to offer, no longer want to give them my money or a chance, and now I don't see that changing anytime soon. We gamers truly are the most oppressed race. There is nothing else on this planet that is worse than what Nintendo is trying to do to us right now. So that is my rant, everyone. I do apologize for it being so negative. I always do my best to try to find the bright side of things, or even find things to be positive about, but in this case, I just don't see anything good coming from this. I'd be curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this. Of course, as usual, I am always open to hearing anybody's opinion, especially from the Nintendo fans, because this is something that we need to keep talking about and do our absolute best to get the people we know to not buy into. As I always do, I will be keeping my eye on everything that you guys are saying, and I will also do my absolute best to get back to as many of you as possible. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I greatly appreciate every single one of you for taking the time out of your day to give this video a watch. Until next time, everyone, I will catch you guys later.